Hello everyone, Alasdair Gold here. Oh my word. Fair play to anyone who made that trip up to Goodison Park and back because, even if you found your way home, it was a train strike day. My last train back was cancelled, which was great fun. I ended up having to get this roundabout trip via Chester, then Crewe, then a very slow train back to Euston eventually. Set out at 7:30 a.m, got back at midnight. But as I always say, I'm paid to do that. I have to do that. I have no choice. The hardy travelling Tottenham fans, they pay out their money and they go and do that because I guess they need to. They need to as well, but in a very different way. Fair play because wow, that was some day. It really was. We're going to dive into various parts of it. We're going to dive into what happened afterwards, what's happened since, Ange Postecoglou's future. Will we ever see a transfer of an outfield player coming to Tottenham Hotspur? I realised when I started this, I'm wearing a Ghostbusters t-shirt that says 1984. It kind of feels like that might be the last year that Spurs signed an outfield player, perhaps. I'm being flippant, of course it's not, but it just feels like that right at the moment because, I was sat there in the press conference room after the game. Ange Postecoglou walked in and he looked like a man that's been abandoned. He just did. I'm not saying, someone left on some street corner in a basket or something, but certainly he looked like a guy that the weight of the world was on his shoulders and he was having to deal with everything as the face of Tottenham Hotspur. And he's in one of those kind of moods. He is occasionally, this one more so than ever, when the local journalists you can hear them muttering as they walk away. It's like, why is he so quiet? Does he always talk that quiet? I could barely hear what he was saying. That's kind of how he was. He sits there and talks in this very low, quiet, thoroughly beaten down way into the microphone. And look, those of us who have followed Tottenham Hotspur for many, many years, we've seen that before. It's not just exclusive to Ange Postecoglou. We've seen many a Tottenham manager reach that stage of just being thoroughly fed up with everything that's going on around them and feeling utterly out of control of events at Spurs. This is, I must stress straight off the bat, this is not to excuse the performance yesterday from Postecoglou because he made some mistakes and he admitted to it. Fair play. I kind of called him out on some of the decisions he made, one in particular being the back three, and he absolutely admitted it just was a tactic switch that failed. He tried to find this way he had essentially 11 fit players, which is another part of context, but he tried to fit a system which he thought would maybe help those 11 players. And it was a back three. It was the ability, I think, to maybe push on the wing-backs more as wingers to give them a bit more width, to, I reckon, maybe protect Ben Davies a little bit, because Ben Davies comes straight back into the team. Wasn't due to play the 90 minutes, but did, of course. That's the way Spurs work, because something else happened, which we'll talk about. And I think maybe having two centre-backs alongside him and a pacey left wing-back in Jed Spence was maybe going to help Ben Davies doing less running. I'm guessing that's the idea. He didn't go into the specifics of that when I asked, but certainly, it failed. It failed. They were so disorganised. They were so sloppy. They were just dreadful, really. It completely failed, and that's down to his tactic. It absolutely was Postecoglou's fault that first half. You could argue, some of the performances, the players, things like that, but ultimately he set them up and they went out and failed in that tactic, in that structure, in that game plan. They were very lucky to get in at half-time at 3-0. They really were. Look, the stats of the game, at the end of it, they show you 11 shots for Spurs, 12 shots for Everton, 6 on target for each side, Spurs having 64% of possession, but the stats don't tell the story of that game. 3-2 ultimately flattered Spurs. Guesty, my partner in crime on our podcast, Golden Guest Talk Tottenham, he was sat in his season ticket holding seat. The seat doesn't hold a season ticket, but you know what I mean. at Goodison Park rather than working yesterday. I guess it would have been a clash of interest for him. But he was, straight away, first message after the game. It's like, somehow you utterly, like, as in Spurs, didn't deserve to get anything out of that game, yet I was terrified you were going to get something out of that game, which sums it up perfectly, really. I really felt first half, I'm sitting there writing away, it felt like an end of days match. It felt like this is the end of a manager's era. But actually, whereas in the past, those first halves have bled into the second half of games when it has been the end of a tenure, I would say the second half, there was enough about it to suggest that the players are still with Postecoglou, which is something in his corner. But ultimately, it wasn't enough on the day. Regardless, it wasn't enough on the day. Dreadful performance. Felt so sorry for those fans that had travelled all the way up there. And it was against a Everton side that have only won once in the Premier League since mid-October and had a striker in Dominic Calvert-Lewin who had not scored a Premier League goal, a single Premier League goal in the league since September. Was that Dr Tottenham are here to see? Let them in. My goodness. That, for me, honestly, I get that people like the Spursy tag, all that sort of stuff. For me, the most accurate tag is Dr Tottenham. That, by far, is the most accurate. If there is anyone out there that has some kind of problem, something that needs a cure, we'll send in Dr. Tottenham. Honestly, there are so many teams that haven't won their first game of the season, have a player that hasn't scored, want to break some kind of bad record. Spurs just go in there and go, all right, we're here, go on, kind of thing. It's just madness. It's so frustratingly maddening. It really is. But this is the thing, that they'll help and cure other teams, yet they won't help and cure themselves. There's been no help for Postecoglou whatsoever throughout this. For the past 6 weeks, he might as well have walked around with one of these sandwich boards over him. One side saying, we need more players. The other side saying Dom needs help. Because those are the two expressions I've heard him say a million times in the last 6 weeks. Help just hasn't arrived, though, for either him or Solanke. And lo and behold, what happens? We find out ahead of the game that one of his most overused players, I think in the top three, I think it's Porro, Kulusevski and Solanke are the top three most played players and most minutes for Spurs. Shock, horror, Dom needs help becomes Dom's injured because the help didn't come. So annoying. It really is so maddening. And it wasn't... And this is the thing, like, as soon as news of the injury started to kind of filter out, it was very much like, it's Postecoglou's fault, it's a training thing. It actually wasn't. It was just a normal thing. He was just taking a shot in training. It wasn't a contact thing, wasn't being challenged, just went to have a shot, kind of mistimed it, and just twisted his knee. Honestly, it was freakish to the extreme. And again, I'm not denying that some of the injuries over the course of this season and last have been... part of the Postecoglou wheelhouse of kind of what happens. And I would say there's this thing as well, though, on the flip side to this, about his training sessions are mad, and all this, and this what causes his continued injuries. They haven't been training like that. They haven't been able to. They haven't been able to because of two things. First off, so many games that there has to be a recovery day or two after fixtures. A lot of the times at the moment, they're giving players the day off after games, just purely because they're so shattered, there's so few of them. And then next off, he's not an idiot. He's not going to push these players to extreme, intense sessions when they are absolutely going into games looking knackered already. It does him and his football no good whatsoever. I think it's just kind of an easy thing to keep whacking him with now. I think it's more the fact that these players are just so tired, they're more susceptible to picking up hamstring injuries because they're having to play every 3 days. But yeah, 20 days into the transfer window, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Not a sign of an outfield player, not a whiff of an outfield player heading towards N17 at this moment. Hopefully that changes over the course of today, tomorrow, whatever. But, Postecoglou used the word urgent after the game. It's been urgent for a long time. It's just, and he is getting freak injuries now, like the Solanke one as well. And there's been a few of those, like the Vicario one too. just honestly, it's just this. They had 10 injured players going into that game. How many matches have you heard me say they're in double figures of unavailable players? Only 4, I would say, roughly, of the starting lineup yesterday were the kind of 4 regular starters he would probably pick in his strongest team. Everything he's been warning the club about, both privately and publicly, has come to pass. Everything. And I do wonder whether that's kind of part of the reason why, from what I understand, they still remain intent to try to help him rather than just get rid of him. But please do help. To actually do the help. Intentions are great. But please do help. Because, like I say, 20 days in, you had all the time in December when, as I said in the last video, Romero, Van der Ven and Davies were all injured around the same time. Davies 3 days before, start kind of way early. Was it something like the 9th of December and the 6th, 5th for Davies? They've known a long time that Postecoglou was not going to have a defence. They had not moved to fix it. And they've known for a while now that the attack was struggling and needed new options. They have not moved to fix it. It is so... It is just so... It really is just unbelievable. This is what I mean. There's elements to both. There's yesterday's results definitely was a big chunk on Postecoglou. Absolutely. But I don't want that to deflect from the fact that he's just received no help whatsoever. And he looks like a guy just utterly frazzled and just beaten down by the fact he hasn't had any help at all. And just saying, or not saying, but, that being the feeling coming out that they're going to stick with him for now, yeah, great. But you've got to back him. Otherwise, he's just kind of spiralling towards inevitable conclusion. And how many times have we said that about previous managers when they haven't got what they needed to get the most out of what they can do? And then they're the ones that pay the price. It's so frustrating. You're going to hear me say that a lot over the course of this video, so I apologise, but it is. It really is. And yeah, there's some rumours going around about board meetings that are going to decide his fate over the next couple of days. From my understanding, that's just not true. That's not planned to do that whatsoever. I just need to get going with the help. If you're going to help, do it. You look at his bench yesterday, and other than Richarlison, who really was only supposed to probably play 20-25 minutes or so, and Reguilon, you're looking at a bench that otherwise entirely outfield contained teenagers. 6 teenagers on there. And even the team had another couple of 18-year-olds in it, didn't it? So, of the 6 teenagers on the bench as well, 1 was 16, 2 was 17. There's Heung-min as well, who, while he's 18 and ever so slightly older than them, it appears that he must be a long way off being ready to start or even get involved in a Premier League game because Postecoglou's not using him. If he's not going to use him in an FA Cup game against a non-league side at any point, then presumably he's not ready to play Premier League football yet. It just didn't have to be this way. There was just been so much time to get their house in order and identify and sign outfield players. Even if it means paying slightly over the odds to do so, you will make... If it's a money thing, they will make that money back in the long run. Even if, I think I said in the last video, even if it's something as simple as league placings, you're probably going to make a chunk of that money back. But yeah, as Postecoglou and the players failed their travelling fans yesterday in that first half, and with the result itself, so the club really have failed him, Postecoglou, and the squad in not providing reinforcements when they desperately needed them the most. You kind of get the feeling that they might rush in 1 or 2 right at the end of the window. And while that will still help, it's kind of like, but the damage has been done. All those weeks where they were absolutely stuffed. And, you're just kind of waiting for the cards to fall in a certain way so that you're able to get certain players. Maybe. I mean, it may be that Postecoglou comes out afterwards and said, they said we want to go for these players, but they're not available at the end of the window, so I just had to kind of like it or lump it because that was the only way to get them. But you kind of think if they're available at the end of the window, then surely paying over the odds would have got them a little bit earlier. But I don't know. I don't negotiate transfer deals. Maybe that's just too simplistic a view. I don't know. but it's incredibly frustrating. Yeah, and I mean, Dane Scarlett was called back today. I saw like social media doing its thing, like, there you go, that's the striker, that's so awful. It's not. He's come back because he's just not playing at Oxford. I think he's had 20 championship games, scored 4 goals. He's just not getting the game time. And so they've called him back in order to loan him out again. I think if he plays for Spurs even, comes off the bench, I don't think he'd then be able to be loaned out. I think you have to kind of loan him out quickly, or not have him as part of the of match day squads, because you can't play for 3 teams in one season, I don't believe. So yeah, he needs new attackers. Don't worry, not Dane Scarlett coming in to answer all the prayers. A player who hasn't been able to get championship time. Still hope it will come good for Dane. He's shown little moments, and he had a great little run earlier this season when for Oxford and for the England under-21s he was doing really well. Just needs to get a run of games. I was looking, as you do, I looked at the comments kind of underneath on Oxford's post about him coming back on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. And it seemed to be a bit of a mix of Oxford fans being like, and other Oxford fans thinking that he should have gotten a chance over certain other players. So hopefully he goes somewhere and just plays a lot of football and ultimately scores goals, because that's what he needs to do as a striker. So new attacking option, please, at Tottenham. The press conference, actually, going back to that, it was a weird one because it was quite a quiet one. There was a few pauses where I was a little bit worried we're going to have a situation that happened a couple of weeks back at... Where was it? Was it Bournemouth? No, it wasn't Bournemouth. I can't remember. There was somewhere where the press conference ended up being really short because I was working away trying to set up a blog. A couple of people asked a question and then nobody asked one, and then they kind of went because nobody was offering another question. And we had a couple of moments like that. I had to kind of jump in, and someone else jumped in as well. I think it was Jack from The Athletic jumped in at one point as well to stop it kind of suddenly ending. Because this is the thing, sometimes you go to the away grounds and you try and be a little bit respectful and let the kind of local journalists get in there first, but sometimes they're just not really that interested in the away manager. And so yesterday I think I ended up asking 5 questions, like 3 at the start and 2 near the end to kind of keep it going. But it was good in a way because there were a lot of answers that need to be, or questions that need to be asked yesterday, both of him, his decisions, Postecoglou, the tactics, also of the whole side of that transfer thing that I've just been whinging about for the past 17 minutes and 47 seconds or so. And I asked him straight off the bat, really, is a transfer imminent? Have you got anything coming in? Because this injury crisis is not clearing anytime soon. And he just said, look, I'm sure like everybody, the club's well aware of our situation and they're doing their utmost. As far as I know, at the moment, there's nothing imminent. But, I assume between now and, well, we're getting to the end of the window that hopefully something comes up. Hopefully. It shouldn't be a case of hope. And this is not a dig at Postecoglou for that. This is an absolute dig at the club. It shouldn't be hopefully they can sign an outfield player in the January transfer window. That's ridiculous. If you've put in a proper planning, you should have a long list and there should be players that you can go to. If the first one is not there, you go to the next one. I find it unbelievable that it's come to this. But there we go. I asked him that, and I kind of pointed out to him next. I was like, because there had to be a question about his future, because obviously, they're in a really difficult place right now. They're in 15th in the league. Yes, the cup competitions have been doing fine up till now, but you wonder how these games are going to go with so few players. But ultimately, 15th place is a disgrace for Tottenham. They should not be down there. They shouldn't. And he knows that. He's well aware of that. He said that himself. But I kind of said to him, look, we're at this point now where you don't get players back. It's going to affect your future. And your future is going to become, very, very rocky and risky. They're kind of tied together if he's not able to put out a fit and fresh side. And he said, I separate myself from that, though. It means like his future being important and all that. He said, this is not about me. But what it is about me right now is that I have the responsibility for this group of players that I have to try and get us through this. And that's what I've got to focus on. For me to focus on anything else is abstaining myself from the responsibility I have. I'm just determined to get us out of this. club's doing its best to, and he kind of stopped himself and he said, it's more about helping the players than helping me because they're the ones. We're asking some massive jobs of 18-year-olds. We had a 17-year-old out there trying to win games of football for us. And he, to be fair to him, he almost did it. And others, Mikey Moore, we're talking about there, and others who are just playing week on week. So it's more about getting the players help rather than me help. But it's both. That's the thing. Yeah, the players need help because they're dropping like flies because they're playing every single game. But he needs help as well because he's all kind of just naturally tied into this. Because if he can't put out a team that is strong enough, and look, I would agree with people saying that the team that actually was out there was probably strong enough to do the job against Everton, who have had such a tough time. I just think it was completely the wrong system. I thought before the game when I saw the lineup, it was like, yes, we're finally getting to see Gray in his midfield position. We're going to get him, see him there, probably with Bergvall and Sarr in a three, which I have vague recollection. Someone might be able to help me with this. I asked this in the press room. I feel like we saw that three in one of the pre-season games. I don't know whether it was the Bayern match on tour, maybe. There was definitely one of the games. I feel like it was one of the tour games in Asia where it was Bergvall, Gray, and Sarr playing together, and they were horrendous. It just didn't work. But of course, a completely different time. Gray and Bergvall, unexpectedly perhaps, are kind of quite experienced Premier League players at this point because they've had to play so many games and so many minutes. But it's still so I would have preferred to see them as that, and I think the game would have been a different kind of structure to it had they played that way. But no, we got this back three, which just didn't work at all. But yeah. I mean, we've had another week where I think I said it in the last video that so many managers now, every single one, we hear them using that line about the club are working hard and January transfer window's tough. We hear it so many times. But the difference is those managers eventually all kind of snapped a little bit. And they weren't shy, let's say. Even if it happened to be after their time at the club, they weren't shy in letting everyone know it wasn't their fault, And, I mean, I said it in previous videos. History and the future, or the present technically, has shown that those managers have gone elsewhere and succeeded. Napoli and Conte, they're I think they're top of Serie A net right now and flying. Nottingham Forest and Nuno are flying. Jose's in second with Fenerbahce, I think, in Turkey. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult. Can't really say it with Poch because he's just started his national tenure, hasn't he? I had someone suggesting Poch to me as the new manager, and I had someone suggesting Thomas Tuchel to me yesterday had to be the new Spurs manager. They are both just in new international jobs. You might have noticed, this person presumably hadn't, that Thomas Tuchel is the England manager now. So anyway. But Postecoglou doesn't do that. He doesn't kind of make digs at the club and things like that. It could be because he's got this different journey. He has come on to be there. These managers, some of them coming in, had been in the Premier League before. They'd won Premier League titles and things like that. And maybe he feels that hasn't got that background to be able to do that. Perhaps, I don't know. But whatever the reasoning, or whether he's just the kind of guy that tries to take as much blame as possible, and rather than take it or give it to other people, I don't know. But he's just not chosen to go down that route as of yet. Sorry, just replying to someone. It was actually just my wife. It was nothing exciting. Just my wife was about to come in the front door downstairs and probably make a lot of noise as she came in. The professionalism of these videos is off the charts. And he, in an interview with the BBC, Postecoglou said, there will be urgency in the transfer market, but it doesn't need me to say it. Everybody can see that. Can everyone? I have no issues with how the club are going about it. They're working hard and trying to find solutions. These players need help, and hopefully over the next 10 days or so we'll find a solution. It is really tricky. We're not the only ones in the market. The club are trying hard. There's that phrase again. I wonder whether there's this kind of situation of do we, and this is me kind of putting myself in the mind of the club, the recruitment, whatever, do we sign short-term players with the knowledge that the rest of the squad is going to come back, and then those players may be surplus to requirements quite quickly? Do they sign young players for the future, continuing this trend of this season, that then will have a place at the club over the years to come? So it's not a bad move to bring them in now. A bit like Kinski, I suppose, who presumably, although he did very well again, I felt on the whole yesterday, presumably is going to become a number 2 when Vicario does come back, unless he has the most incredible run of games. I don't know. I don't know where the thinking is, or maybe even if Postecoglou doesn't make it through this period, are they also thinking we need to sign players that aren't just for him? They're players that would suit anyone. I don't know. I don't know. I would love to know, because I would love to know why we're at the 20th of January and not a single outfield player has been signed. And Postecoglou will look around, I think, in this January transfer window. And while it is more difficult than the summer one, I don't think anyone denies that. I don't think anyone's saying that they can go out there and get the best players in the world or anything like that. You know, Spurs have struggled to do that in the summer. But, you know, other clubs, not all of them granted, but some that really need them, have gone out in this transfer window and they've managed to sign players. They have. You know, he might look at Aston Villa, they've managed that. Ipswich have managed it. You know, they're right down the bottom. Wolves have managed it. They're struggling down the bottom as well. And yes, I'm aware Spurs are not that far up above them in terms of places. Man City have gone out there. I know, again, Man City are a bit of a different case, but they have gone out there and they've addressed issues. And another key one, really, I suppose, right now is Bournemouth. Bournemouth are probably not helping Postecoglou's cause in that they're struggling with injuries, yet they're winning games. And they've also added to their squad, albeit with younger players, but they've still made some additions. I guess when it comes to Bournemouth, Postecoglou may well argue that Spurs' injuries have come in these big clumps in certain areas of his team, which have robbed him really from much of his first 11 and the back and up front as well. And it's killed his ability to rotate in playing far more matches than Bournemouth have, because Spurs have played 33 games so far and Bournemouth have played 24. So the key thing for Bournemouth, I think, and I do think they're a club doing incredibly well, and Iraola's done very well in spite of their injuries as well. But the one help that he's had, other than players actually coming through the door, albeit young ones, is that Bournemouth have had a lot of free midweeks to recover. These players, if you're asking the same 11 or so to go again and again and again, if they've got 7 days between matches, it's a different thing. They're getting a full recovery and they're not going to be jaded like players every 3 days playing matches are going to be. But I do think they're doing a terrific job, Bournemouth, and him as a manager as well. But look, regardless of that, Postecoglou knows the results have to be better. They're it's a bad word. They're rubbish. They're absolutely rubbish. They need to be better in the Premier League. Regardless of who he has available, he has to find a way through it. Otherwise, eventually, his job is going to be in real danger. And he said yesterday, I've never played the victim. At the end of the day, I still believe the responsibility lies with me to get this right, and that is where I sit with things. Whatever the circumstances are, and it's fair to say it's a challenging situation for sure, a lot of it is out of your control as a manager when you're losing the amount of players we are at the moment. But I still have to steer us through, and if I start worrying about myself and the cards I've been dealt with, it is a dereliction of my duty and my responsibility. It is not how I see it. I see it as these are the cards I've been dealt, and it's up to me to get us out of it, and I have to be good enough to do that. I kind of felt like he kind of got more upbeat as the press conference went on, which was weird. He kind of started it looking like he just wanted to just have nothing to do with football, Tottenham, anything anymore. And he kind of ended it like a man that, I don't know, was slightly refocused again. And I'm not claiming responsibility for that or any of the other journalists doing that. I think he just, I don't know, maybe realised just how kind of down and out he sounded. Yeah, maybe. And yeah, I mean, going to the match itself, back three didn't work, just looked dreadful from the start. Sloppy, confused defending at times. Everton's direct play was just a big issue for Spurs from the off. 12 minutes in, Calvert-Lewin receives a pass that he's just in so much space between Dre and Ragishin. Gray and Dragishin. I don't know where my brain's at. Still knackered from the long trip back yesterday. And yeah, he just had so much space and he turns inside. But then there's still an opportunity for about 3 Spurs players to stop him. And he turned them all inside out. Poor Archie Gray, honestly. It was like a ice skater going by him. I thought he was going to do what Porro did last week when he was turned inside out. And yeah, Calvert-Lewin hits a low shot that completely wrong foots Kinski, goes straight into the net. Sonny had a couple of big chances in that first half. He had one where he ran through and he looked like he was doing really well, going himself into quite a good angle, and he just took too long to actually take the shot. Got himself tackled. I think it was Tarkowski or Branthwaite. Can't remember. But either way, they got back and tackled him. And then the next one was, I think it was Kulusevski got into the box and pulled the ball across. And he was about 8 yards out, Sonny, and he just hit this quite tame effort that Pickford was able to just kind of fall upon. It wasn't, that good at all. He also had a penalty shout. I think it was Branthwaite brought him down. It's one of those that I've seen given. And I think a couple of referees have done their analysis today on various channels and said it would have been a bit harsh, but probably was a penalty. But yeah, not given. It's just the way things are going at Spurs right now. And yeah, Spurs concede a second, don't they? And it was a poor bit of defending by Dragishin. Gray was kind of caught up the field. I can't remember why, but he was up the pitch. And then Ndiaye was running through the centre of the pitch. Dragishin kind of goes as if, do I go towards him? No, I don't trust myself to get there. And then pulled back, ended up being on the back foot, retreating. Then tried to use some kind of physical power, I guess, to kind of knock the Everton man to the side. Didn't work at all. He takes a shot, powers it past Kinski and into the net. And then matters got even worse when I can't remember if it was a corner or a set pit or a free kick, but the ball's pumped into the box. Tarkowski heads it back across. It took a bit of a flick onto the leg of Archie Gray and into the net. 3-0. And genuinely, I'm sitting there at my laptop thinking, oh my goodness, this is like St James's Park. This could end up being an absolute horror show. And to be fair, Kinski was called into action a few times, made a couple of full-length diving saves, tipped one onto the post. Calvert-Lewin curled one wide as well. I think there was another chance where someone put it just wide. It might have even been Calvert-Lewin again. You could see the difference the goal made to Calvert-Lewin. He was suddenly the Calvert-Lewin that's a danger kind of player, a real physical hold-up player that you just can't get the ball off. And yeah, dreadful. And I asked him, Postecoglou, about that first half. That's not good enough, essentially. And he said it wasn't great the first half. I guess the majority of that is down to me. I changed the team and I changed the structure. We had a couple of setbacks in terms of player availability, and we struggled to get control of the game and allowed Everton to capitalise on that. Obviously, at half-time, we had a mountain to climb. Fair play to the players. They kept going until the end, but ultimately fell short. So this was the point when I asked him, it was like, essentially, why? Why did you change to a back three? And he said, I had 11 fit players. So it was a way of trying to find a way to fit the ones we had into a structure. Players tried hard enough, but it didn't work. And he was quite honest. This is the thing. It's like there's no getting away from it. This was a performance that was born, unfortunately, of Postecoglou's tactical mistake. But he fronted up and he took that after the game, absolutely. And I don't know whether he would have continued with that structure or whether Gray would have moved into midfield. But just before the break, Dragishin took a whack as Calvert-Lewin's elbow hit him right above the eye. And he had this kind of cut above his eye. It took him a little while to stem the blood. And although he did come back on for the end of the first half, he didn't re-emerge for the second half. And that, like I say, whether it would have happened anyway or not, but it forced a change to a back four. And it did actually create 2 risky new situations, unfortunately, though. So Ben Davies Postecoglou said ahead of the game would definitely not be, or he said he wouldn't be able to play the full match. He played the full match, which is again is putting him in that risk zone of injuring himself again. But the trouble is who else has he got? This is the issue. The centre back on the bench was Malachi Hardy, who's 16 years old. He's a schoolboy. He needs a note to play in midweek matches. It will be involved in midweek matches. It's just, this is what we're kind of dealing with at Spurs right now. And the other one was Richarlison, who I think probably, like I said, would have played 25 minutes, maybe half an hour at a push. 50 minutes yesterday included added time, maybe more, 50, 51, 52. Yeah, but to be fair, they improved with him up top. They did. They looked a bit better. They looked a bit more. They looked just stronger. Everton were a bit sloppy second half, which helped. Moyes said that after the game. He said their passing wasn't great. But like I said, kind of alluded to earlier, it shows where you're at right now. That a 17-year-old comes off the bench with, I don't know what it was, 15, 17 minutes ago, something like that. And he's the one that makes things happen for Spurs. And that shouldn't be the case. It should not be on a 17-year-old to change a game. Postecoglou said that earlier. That is a failing in getting the squad that he needs, the depth he needs, because that's just wrong. But yeah, they did start to creep back into it. First, Maddison gets down the right-hand side. Pickford comes out. He draws him out. Somehow got the ball to Moore. Moore's shot's blocked. The ball goes back to Kulusevski, who dinks the most beautiful little chip over the top of Pickford and the covering defenders into the net. It's one of those goals that's going to get utterly forgotten about. Because of the match, the result, the performance in that first half, the mists of time will swallow up that goal. I really hope at the end of the season, if we're doing best goals of the season, all this sort of malarkey, please try and remember that goal. It was beautiful. It was a first-time shot as well. He didn't even stop it and look up and try something. He just hit it perfectly. For me, I literally can't remember any other goal right now, but it's got to be up there for goal of the month, definitely, if they still do that. But yeah, I just feel it's going to get lost. Although saying that, what's his name? Eric Lamella's Rabona goal against Arsenal didn't seem to get lost, even though not only did they lose, but he got sent off, didn't he? So you never know. But I just feel like this one is going to be enveloped by the sands of time. We'll get away from mist to sands of time. They huffed and puffed Spurs, but they couldn't find the next goal until added time. Had it come 5 minutes earlier even, I think they might have grabbed a point. But the fact that it came, I think, in the 92nd minute, and they had, I think it was 4 minutes of added time to play. It wasn't going. It was just too little, too late, and it was beautiful. Again, it was really good for Mikey Moore. Mikey Moore curls an absolute pinpoint, beautiful curling ball into the back post, where Richarlison slams in and knocks it in. It gets a big whack from Pickford in doing so, which brought the horrendous moment of Richarlison lying in the goal, looking really hurt, then realising, oh no, it's me, I can't look hurt, getting up, signalling to the bench, I'm okay, and then doing this awful limping run back to the centre circle, where he looked like he had a wooden leg, essentially, like he was Long John Silver, which is what I've looked like on some of my marathon runs recently. Runs to train for the marathon. And he looked like he was trying to get back to the centre circle. And you're just thinking, no, of all the people, please don't be injured. He doesn't. It would be rubbish. Scoring a goal. Last time he got injured, he did it setting up a goal. Please don't have got injured while scoring a goal. It wasn't mentioned afterwards, so hopefully not. But look, both substitutes, I think, can take credit from their displays. I thought Richarlison came on, did well, battled well, and the fact that he got 50 or so minutes in his legs, not leg, that fits in with the Long John Silver thing. Hopefully, that will, just give him a bit more confidence in his body as well, and give the coaching staff a little bit more confidence that maybe on Thursday night he might well have to. Maybe he can start against Hoffenheim and get an hour out of him or so. That's only a little bit more time than that. Mikey Moore did well. I mean, for Richarlison, I think Spurs just need that central striker that's a bit more of a target man and holds up the ball. Son can play there in certain games. I don't think in a physical game that's the one for him, because if the ball's going to be lumped up, he's just going to get beaten to the ball, because that's not his forte, jumping and trying to head and things like that. Although, to be fair, he puts those 2 chances away he had. Then we're all saying what a terrific job he did playing up front. That is the fine lines in football, I guess. Richarlison, actually, I forgot to say, after the game, walked around the entire pitch applauding everyone, travelling fans, home fans as well, which I think was, and judging by an Instagram post he did afterwards, looks to be because it's probably the last time he's going to play at Goodison Park, which Everton obviously moving to their new stadium at the end of the season. So, yeah, I mean, unless I think they're still in the FA Cup, so there's technically a chance if both teams get through that they maybe could get an away game out of Goodison Park, but ultimately it's probably likely. The chances are that it is. I mean, I kind of, other than the horrendous first half, tried to drink in the atmosphere as much as possible, because I've said this before, but it's the closest stadium to me in terms of vibe and feel and look to White Hart Lane. And I feel like someone told me, wasn't it designed by the same architect, I think. I'm going to look that up now as I'm talking, because I think that is the case. But yeah, and it is the first stadium. Sorry to those who've heard me say this before. It's the first game I went to as a Tottenham reporter. 2016. Barkley scored and Lamella scored. It was my first ever game. Who designed White Hart Lane and Goodison Park? Look at this live. My daughter was telling me, actually, she watches someone on TikTok or YouTube who looks things up as they're talking. Archibald Leach. White Hart Lane. Yeah, well, we know it was White Hart Lane. Goodison Park. There you go. I'm sure someone had told me that before, so I wanted to 100% make sure. But yes, that will be the reason it's got that vibe about it. So it will be sad when it goes. It is kind of, there's not too many remaining old school grounds, and that is one of them. But yeah, so Richarlison did that. I'm trying to think of other positives, really. Kinski did well. Could have been 6-0 at half-time had he not been there. There was a good moment when he rushed out and stopped Calvert-Lewin, which I thought was as good as the kind of full-length saves that he also did. Lucas Bergvall, again, I thought it was good. He was kind of trying to take control of the midfield when no one else was. So that's something, again, as an 18-year-old. Again, played full 90-plus minutes. So, yeah, I think that's definitely another kind of tick in the plus column for him going forward. Jed Spencer's pretty good on the whole. Made 7 successful dribbles, I should say, during the game. Was a little bit loose with the ball at times. Lost it 5 times. Had 2 unsuccessful touches as well. But on the whole, I think he's trying to make things happen. He's almost become... Do you remember we said earlier in the season that Porro was almost becoming one of the main creative threats for Spurs? I kind of feel like Jed Spencer's taken on that mantle now as the fitter fullback. Porro is probably raiding forward a little bit less. And if he does, it's maybe not as deep as he would normally run. Yeah. Archie Gray had a tough day. He did. That's probably one of the tougher games he's had to face. Again, 18-year-old, playing every single minute possible, every few days. Unfamiliar position. Like I said, such a shame we didn't get to see him in midfield. I think it would have been the prime opportunity to do that. But like I said, the more I think about it, the more I wonder whether it was to save Davies' legs and just try to prevent him getting hamstring injury. Talking of Davies and senior players probably mostly anonymous. Like I say, Sonny puts those couple of chances away. It's probably a different tale for him. Maddison kind of got more involved, I suppose. The second half wore on, was involved in the first goal, but yeah, he's better. He's capable of so much more than he's producing at the moment. And he did one of his kind of really down and annoyed with this interviews that he does, which is good. In a way, that's good. You know, I can't. I've got to be balanced in this because I've said before I wanted to see him come out after defeats, and he has in a few of the recent ones. So, I mean, fair play for that. Probably Davies was the one out of the senior players that I didn't think he did that badly for someone that hadn't played for 6 weeks or so, and he came in and I thought he did okay. And he spoke after the game. He said it's probably the toughest period since I've been at the club. And he kind of laid down a bit of a challenge actually to his teammates. He said, "We'll see the players who are willing to fight and show they really care about this. It's a tough time for the club and the squad. We need people who will really fight. I see the work we put in every day. Everyone is hurting. It's a very difficult period and we're hurting too, like the fans." Talking to the fans, players did go over and kind of try to applaud them. Certain players got applause back. Certain people didn't get applause back. They got the fans giving their feelings. I think mainly it's difficult, really. No, I'm not even going to say it because it's difficult because you see these videos and you assume they're saying something at someone, but actually there's other people around them and you don't know who they're saying it at. So there's no point me even picking out any names in particular, whether that be staff, players, whatever. But certainly the fans made their feelings known, and quite right too. You know, if you've done that kind of travelling and a team just haven't even bothered to show up in the first half especially, no issue with that whatsoever. Not that it matters whether I should or not. Yeah, but Maddison did an interview just after going over and applauding the fans. You could tell it in his face. He said, "Too little, too late, what they did. We're in a tough moment. There's no denying that. It was a tough afternoon. They were quite direct, but we should do better for the goals. We need to be more resilient. We need to be tougher to score against, really, collectively. It was a tough first half. It is what it is. We're in a tough moment at the minute with a very depleted squad. To be fair, though, no excuses for that first half. The message at halftime from the manager was to be resilient. Take a bit of pride in the second half. We nearly got back into it, but like I said, it was too little, too late, and a tough afternoon. We had 11 fit senior players today, maybe 12 with Richarlison, but he's nowhere near ready to start today because of his injury. There's context to it, but ultimately as 11 starters, 11 professionals, the first half is unacceptable. We know that. The fans will have their opinion and criticise, and rightly so. We've just got to stare that in the face and take that on the chin. They probably don't want to even hear me talking too much either. They want to see action. We've got a good chance to do that at Hoffenheim in the Europa League on Thursday. The problem is, for that game in Hoffenheim, the availability only gets worse. They actually have less players for that game because while Bentancur might be available, I think the concussion protocol they're going to have to see, but I think in terms of the protocol, I think he would be available for that game, but obviously it depends how he's feeling and all the tests he has to go through. But that while they get him back, Spence isn't available. Reguilon isn't available. Kinski isn't available. So, yeah, and then the injuries that they got in the last week. Postecoglou said Brennan Johnson should be 3 to 4 weeks with a calf injury. Basuma, he did say he hoped to have back next weekend, but we'll see. Depends what it was. If it's a muscle injury, then this is Tottenham. It could be longer than that. And of course, Solanke, he said he'll miss a few weeks, was the exact expression. I don't think it's as serious as a knee injury could be, but yeah, we'll have to see with him. Sometimes you see people with knee injuries come back a little bit earlier if it's not a really serious one and there's no risk of it becoming one, and maybe they play through the pain, but we'll see. We'll see. It depends exactly what it's like. And I asked him about kind of just rolling with these punches he keeps getting in the players each week going out, getting injured. And he said it's a pretty extreme situation. We've lost 3 players, significant players since the last game. We've already got 6, 7 or 8 out. Obviously, we lost on really late yesterday in training, something innocuous. So it's just the run we're on at the moment, the situation we're in. At some point that will change. We'll get some players back, but right now it's just a situation we're dealt, and the responsibility lies squarely with me to try to get us out of it. And this is a problem. The defeats, the unavailable players, the dreadful run in Hull in the Premier League, they're hampering his chances of getting them out of it because in that first half, morale looked poor. It looked really, really low. But then, to be fair, like I said, second half they showed some spirit, which I didn't think was coming, and it did. The trouble also with Postecoglou is that with every defeat, so he loses the support of more fans. More fans just get frustrated, and then they see the injuries as an excuse. And especially if he's going to make tactical mistakes like he did yesterday, and that's going to influence the game, then yes, more people are going to kind of come away from his corner. But then also, I think there is a realization that who is dropped into this situation, parachuted into it, magically finds a cure for all the missing players. Whoever comes in, even if that were just, I don't know, Ryan Mason, Matt Wells, one of the coaches comes in, or whether that would be another manager, they've still got 11 to 12 players to pick from. It's not changing. Until Spurs pull their finger out and actually sign someone, there's no additional players kind of back in the mix. And I've seen people, and I mentioned him earlier, and quite rightly so, Andoni Iraola is doing really, really well at Bournemouth. No way on earth would he leave Bournemouth halfway through a season. And also, no way on earth is he a qualified doctor who can heal injuries through Mr. Miyagi-like touch. It doesn't happen. It's whatever they choose to do next, Spurs. And right now, it is sticking with Postecoglou, and it is trying to help him. They have to do it. They have to work better. Rather than just trying hard and working hard, they have to get it done. If Postecoglou is not allowed to use injuries as an excuse, then the club is not allowed to use the January window as an excuse. They've just got to get it done. He was asked, actually, Postecoglou, what continues to motivate him and the players and the staff and the club at the moment to push through when it's kind of just such a difficult time right now. And he said there's plenty for the club, our fans, our season. We're still in 4 competitions this season. We're in the semi-final of the Carabao Cup. Got a couple of big European games coming up. We're still in the FA Cup. Obviously, our league position is not great, to say the least. We need to improve that, and eventually our players will come back. It is significant talent that will come back. It's not like this is what it is. There is a motivation to get through this, so that when we do get our players back, we can get something significant out of our season. It would be classic Spurs, wouldn't it, to finish low down the table and win a trophy? It would just be madness. But yeah, Postecoglou needs help and he needs results. He does. I'm sorry if that's a repeat of what I said in the previous video, but sadly, Spurs have not changed things since then. He needs help. He needs results. Only Tottenham can provide one of those things, the help. And in doing so, they'll probably get the other, because he'll get the results if he gets help and more bodies and more players to be able to use. But so far, they've done nothing. And it's just left him sitting there in these press conferences with the weight of the world on his shoulders. And I do feel sorry for him. I do. I think there's now this kind of groundswell, especially on social media, of people having had enough of him. And to be fair, I was talking to some of the travelling fans after the game. There's some of them that are just kind of like, he's got to go. And I asked, okay, but who do you want instead? And the few people that said that to me, they went, well, that's the thing, isn't it? And I was like, well, that is exactly the thing. It's like, it is quite a key thing, because it's quite easy to say kind of go and not give him the chance to kind of manage them when he actually gets some players back. But you've got to say kind of who. And it can't be Tuchel, who's just taken an England job. It can't be Poch, who's just taken an American job, USA job. It can't be Iraola, who's not going to come out of his job. You would imagine Johan Langer would maybe go for someone like Thomas Frank at Brentford, perhaps. I like Thomas Frank. I think his football would be different in terms of, I think Spurs fans on some days wouldn't like it. But certainly he's a very good coach and manager and a very interesting person. You would imagine if there's a base connection to it again, base represent Postecoglou and most of the Spurs squad, or a load of them. I think they also represent Kieran McKenna, so that maybe would be someone again. But, they're having a tough time of it at the moment. this is the key thing. I've got absolutely no issue with people saying they don't want Postecoglou to be manager. That's absolutely their right, especially, they're these guys that are travelling week in, week out, heading across the country and everything to go and see it, and they're not happy with what they're seeing. Quite right, they shouldn't be. But I'm just always fascinated more to know who then comes in and what happens and how do they change things, because they're going to walk into the same situation. They just are. But I do feel sorry for Postecoglou. I just think he's been, as with many Spurs managers, dealt a tough hand, and he's not getting the help. Hopefully, over the next couple of days, that changes. But again, I'm using the word hopefully, which is just so frustrating. But there you go. That's it, really. I don't want to talk about Tottenham anymore. I want to go and head off, and it's a day off. And hopefully that means something happens in the last few hours of it. Then off to Germany and Hoffenheim on Wednesday morning. I've got to do an interview tomorrow. Then Hoffenheim on Wednesday, the press conference, and then Thursday the game. It's an early kickoff here. I think it's 5:45 in the UK. I think it's 6:45. I think that's just 1 hour ahead, aren't they? There, and I could tell you that Hoffenheim are having a dreadful season. It's really been bad for them. But then we could also say hello, Dr Tottenham. So let's see. Please let something positive start to turn things back around, and please can we get some players in through the door and a few come back a little bit earlier than expected. That would be lovely. What else before I go? As I said about my marathon preparation at the end of the last video, I was going to go and see a physio, which I did today. Saw a terrific guy called George Cooper, who's worked Premier League teams before. He just happens to be a local physio who was highly recommended to me, and I went to once, and he was brilliant, but also is so entertaining to talk to, because you're going to getting all the physio work done, and you're also talking loads of cool football stuff, because he's worked at West Ham, Birmingham, Charlton, places like that in the past as a top level physio. Could do with getting him in at Spurs. Maybe he could help things. But yes, he's helped my sore hamstring, but he has banned me from playing football until after the marathon, which is heartbreaking. I do enjoy my five-a-side each week, but I'm just going to keep... I get it. I'm going to keep aggravating my hamstring and a groin problem I've had since May last year. It's fine. I suppose if I'm going to run this thing, I'm up to 15 miles now, runs, which I think means I'm getting there, but they are painful. So he's helping me kind of get through that a little bit. And terrific guy. Yeah, works near Stansted Airport. But there you go. Enough about my physio work and my falling apart body. Time to head off. And like I say, off to Germany on Wednesday. Back late on Friday. So probably not a video, I'd imagine, until Saturday morning. And then Leicester at home, which now has become huge. It's like massive, isn't it? Just ridiculous, because win that and then suddenly all these kind of fears about relegation things, which I didn't even really want to say it, so I'm annoyed myself at even mentioning it, but I don't think that's going to be something that we have to worry about. I've probably jinxed everything now. Is there any wood in here to touch? To touch my head, that cliche. Oh, there is. The leg on this sofa is wood. But I think just because Spurs scored too many goals. I think maybe I said that in the last video because someone picked me up on it. And they're going to get players back. They are. I'm not going to talk about it anymore because I'm going to end up jinxing it and making it happen. Spurs will be the first team to win a treble and get relegated. No, I'm sure they'll turn things around. Hopefully. Time to head off. I need to get my brain away from Spurs for a little bit until I get back into work again in the morning. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.